My name's Danielle, I'm 54, and if someone had told me a decade ago that the little girl who once begged me to braid her hair would one day walk right past me at her wedding as if I were invisible, I would have laughed. But family has a cruel way of twisting love into expectation. I showed up for every scraped knee, every math assignment, every heartbreak. Yet on her big day, I was just the guy footing the bill, nothing more. Funny how the people you give the most to can forget you the fastest. Sometimes, they don't see your worth until the credit card gets declined. I met Lily when she was 9, small, sharp-eyed, and stubborn in the way only kids from broken homes can be. Her mom, Susan, and I had both survived messy divorces. Her ex, Robert, was little more than a ghost, appearing once or twice a year to drop off a check or pose for a photo, then vanishing like smoke. Meanwhile, Susan and I were building something real, piece by piece. I wasn't trying to take anyone's place. I never asked Lily to call me Dad. I was just there for school plays, bruised knees, middle school crushes, midnight fevers. I showed up, especially when it was hard. It started slow. One day she handed me a card on Father's Day. Another time she asked if I could braid her hair before school. And the day she graduated 8th grade, she looked up at me with tear-bright eyes and said, "Thanks, Dad. I didn't expect it. I didn't ask for it." But that moment, God, that moment, it wrecked me. Susan squeezed my hand like she knew what it meant. Over the years, I did what any father would. Paid for her braces. Got her first car, a beat-up Honda I saved for months to buy. When she got accepted into her dream college, I drove the U-Haul myself, slept on the dorm floor, and built IKEA furniture just to make her room feel like home. I was proud. I was happy. I thought we had a bond you couldn't fake. But when she turned 20, something changed. It started with shorter phone calls. Thank yous became rare. Then, Robert, her biological father, resurfaced. Suddenly he was sharing throwback photos online, calling her my little girl in captions that conveniently cropped me out. Lily devoured it, starved for his attention, and I understood. Kids crave their parents' love no matter how delayed or undeserved, but it hurt. Deeply. Because no matter how much I gave, I started to feel like a placeholder. Like I'd been the substitute teacher all along, good enough to keep things steady, but never meant to stay when the real one decided to show up. Then came the engagement, sparkling ring, joyful shrieks, hugs all around. Lily was radiant, showing off the diamond like it was a trophy she'd fought for. I remember sitting on the couch beside Susan as Lily stood before us, waving her hand in the light. "We're just so happy for you," I told her, meaning every word. But her response made the room tilt slightly off-center. "Thanks," she said, smiling, except her eyes didn't smile. "I'm just glad I'll have both my parents there to walk me down the aisle." There was a pause. Susan blinked, starting to speak. "You mean—" But Lily cut in cheerful and final, "Of course I mean Dad." Not me. Not the man who taught her how to ride a bike. Not the one who sat through every fever, scraped knee, and every heartbreak. No, Dad meant Robert now, the absentee-turned-Instagram father of the year. I brushed it off, or tried to. Told myself it was nostalgia, that maybe she was just trying to piece together old roots. And I could respect that. Every kid wants the parent who left to want them back. I could have stepped aside for that moment if I thought she saw me too. But what started as sentiment turned into something else entirely. She started calling me Daniel again, around others, then in private. She removed my last name from her social media bio. Once proudly Lily Thompson, now she reverted to the surname of the man who never showed up for parent-teacher conferences or moved a single box into her college dorm. There was no father-daughter speech request, no toast, no moment. But when she needed help paying for the wedding, suddenly my name was remembered. She asked if I could front the $12,000 0 cents deposit for the venue, like she was ordering coffee. No please, no thank you, just an assumption. Expectation. I said yes, not for her, but for Susan, because I saw the hope in her eyes, her desire to see her daughter have the day she'd always dreamed of. I told myself I wouldn't take it personally, that I was doing it for love, for family. But the deeper I sank into the planning, the more I felt like a background extra in a movie I was funding but no longer starring in. When Susan gently raised a concern, Lily pushed back. "No one forced him," she said. "He chose to do those things." I came home earlier than planned that day. As I stepped through the door, their voices drifted from the kitchen, too distinct to ignore. Susan's voice was calm, gentle, but unwavering. "He's paid for nearly everything, Lily. You can't just erase him from the picture. He's been more of a father to you than Robert ever was." Then came Lily's reply, quick and cold, slicing through the air. "That was before I had a real dad again." The words hit harder than any slap could. I froze in place, a stone in the hallway. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. My chest caved inward like something vital had been yanked away. I didn't let them see me. I just turned around and walked back out, closing the door as quietly as I could. And I said nothing. Not that night, not the next, not ever. But something shifted inside me, quietly, irreversibly. It wasn't anger. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a silence that settled deep, heavy, and final. I didn't lash out. I didn't demand explanations. I simply got in my car and drove. Nowhere in particular. Just forward, until the fuel warning light blinked to life and the hum of the tires dulled the sting of her words. When the wedding day arrived, I did what I always did. I showed up, on time, pressed suit, tie knotted just right on the third try. I was early enough to help set up the chairs, smooth out the microphone, and double-check the microphone for the speeches I wouldn't give. I smiled, directed vendors, and kept things moving. She walked past me once, no smile, no warmth, barely even a glance. But when Robert arrived, late, reeking of some cologne you could smell a room away, carrying years of absence like it never happened, she lit up, as if the missing piece had finally returned. She embraced him like a soldier home from war, like she'd waited her whole life for that moment. And I stood there, quiet, invisible, a guest at a ceremony I'd funded, planned, and emotionally invested in, yet didn't belong to. Then came the moment. "Who gives this woman away?" the officiant asked. With a radiant smile she turned, took Robert's arm, and answered, "My dad." Not a glance in my direction. The father-daughter dance went to him. The toast mentioned her mother, her in-laws, and my incredible dad Robert. My name was never spoken, not even once. Still, I stayed. I clapped. I smiled in all the right places. I played my part, like always. At the end of the night she approached me, said nothing, just handed me a folded slip of paper, a final tally, a balance. No thank you, no eye contact, just the quiet expectation that I'd pay, again. I looked at her for a long moment, and I didn't reach for my wallet. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't even cry. I just got in the car and drove. No direction in mind, just forward, chasing distance until the gaslight flickered on. The silence was louder than anger. Somewhere between the hum of the engine and the empty roads, I realized this wasn't a phase. This wasn't about nostalgia. I was being erased. When the wedding day came, I suited up. Blue tie, polished shoes, I tied the knot 3 times before it sat just right. I arrived early, before most of the guests, helped set up chairs, coordinated with the caterers, and tested the sound system. I smiled, shook hands, and answered small talk like everything was fine. Like I hadn't been fading out of the picture one frame at a time. And then I saw her. Lily. Beautiful, radiant, walking through the venue like a queen about to be crowned. But when we passed each other, there was no hug, no acknowledgement, just a polite nod, like I was the wedding planner or a distant cousin. Robert showed up late. Again. Smelling like overpriced cologne and underwhelming memories. She squealed and wrapped her arms around him like he was the hero of her life. In that moment, I didn't feel jealous. I felt invisible. When the officiant asked who would give the bride away, she slipped her arm through his and beamed. My dad. Not even a glance in my direction. I sat beside Susan, still and quiet, while the world moved without me. The reception was worse. The father-daughter dance, Robert. Her speech, gushing with praise for Susan, her new in-laws, and my incredible dad, Robert, who came back into my life just when I needed him most. My name? Not even whispered. And I still didn't flinch. I smiled, toasted, applauded, played my part like a pro. Then, when most guests had gone, she approached me, still glowing. She handed me a folded piece of paper, her tone light. Final balance, she said, like we were settling a lunch tab. I unfolded it. The number made my stomach tighten. She expected me to pay again. No thanks. No remorse, just routine entitlement. She smiled. I didn't. And that's when I did it. I turned and walked right past her, down the stairs, through the parking lot, and into the quiet night without saying a single word. Not because I was angry. If only it were that simple. I didn't slam the door, didn't shout or demand answers. I just left. Not out of spite, out of something far colder. Clarity. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching headlights draw ghostly lines across the walls. I wasn't sad, not exactly. I wasn't even heartbroken anymore. What I felt was a kind of stillness. The eerie silence after a final door clicks shut in your soul, and you realize you're not going to open it again. Susan came home late. She could sense it. Something unspoken had shifted. She stood in the doorway, like she wanted to reach for me, but didn't know how. I looked at her and whispered, "Not tonight." My voice wasn't cold, just tired. Tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. The next morning, my phone blew up. Calls from Susan, texts from Lily, even one from Robert of all people. The man who showed up late, danced the spotlight dance, and said the toast. The man who hadn't spent a dime but now felt the need to weigh in. I ignored them all. Instead, I made coffee, walked into my home office, and pulled out a thick binder labeled Wedding Expenses. Page after page of proof, every receipt, invoice, and email thread. Nearly $38,000, 0 cents in expenses. I'd funded over 80% of the wedding, from the imported centerpieces to the ridiculous champagne tower. Not because I had to, because I thought it mattered, because I thought I mattered. And that final paper Lily had handed me? It wasn't even a real invoice. Just a scribbled number on a piece of printer paper, careless, like she was splitting lunch. She had the audacity to double charge me for things I'd already paid for, counting on the fact that I'd be too sentimental, too soft, too me to question it. But not this time. For the next several hours, I sat at my desk with a quiet focus I hadn't felt in years. I combed through receipts, emails, screenshots, and anything that could support a refund. I filed formal disputes with the venue, the florist, and the caterer. Every vendor I dealt with, every charge I could contest. Then I contacted the credit card company. Next, I opened the shared wedding account that Susan and I had set up just in case Lily needed emergency funds in the final weeks. I'd created it with nothing but good intentions. I froze the account immediately. No hesitation. Then came the message. No anger, no theatrics. Just a clean, quiet truth. Lily, I will no longer be financially responsible for any part of your wedding. Any outstanding costs are now between you and your biological father. Please direct all future communication through your mother. I wish you the best in your new life. No sign-off. No name. I hit send, put the phone down, and breathed, for the first time in what felt like years. This wasn't about revenge. It was released. I hadn't walked away to punish her. I walked away to preserve what little was left of myself. What hadn't already been drained, ignored, or repurposed for someone else's celebration. There was no dramatic exit, no slammed doors or raised voices. Just quiet finality. I powered off my phone and sat there in stillness. For once, my silence wasn't passive. It was a boundary. Later that evening, Susan and I sat across from one another at the kitchen table. The room was too still. We were surrounded by leftover favors and unopened bottles of wine, meant for a night that was supposed to be joyful. But there was no small talk. No attempts to fill the silence with false comfort. "I really thought she'd come around," Susan murmured, staring at nothing. "Once she saw everything you'd done." I shook my head slowly, eyes fixed on the coffee swirling in my mug. She did see. She just didn't care. And somehow, that hurt more than if she'd never noticed at all. Susan didn't reply. She didn't cry, either. There was nothing left to spill. Just two people, sitting in the remains of a moment that broke more than one heart. The days that followed were quiet, until they weren't. My inbox began to fill, not with apologies but with explanations that tried to dress themselves as justifications. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Lily wrote. "It was my day. I shouldn't have to pretend for anyone's comfort." She called me childish, said I was overreacting, that I was making everything harder than it needed to be. It made me laugh, low and bitter. I'd been the adult in this story for over a decade. I'd shown up, paid the bills, covered the costs no one else would, but the moment I said no, the moment I stepped back, I was suddenly the one being immature? And then, Robert called. The man who hadn't paid a cent, who showed up late in a rented tux, took photos like he belonged there, and disappeared before the last slice of cake was served. He left a voicemail like we were old college buddies. Man to man, he said, "I think you overreacted. You know how girls are with their dads. She needed me. I stepped up." I stared at my phone like it had sprouted horns. Stepped up? I stepped up when she had strep throat and cried from pain. When her college essay was due and she was too scared to ask for help. When her heart broke over a boy who didn't call, and she came to me because even when she didn't say it, I was her constant. But no tuxedo, no camera flash, just me, in the background, steady and invisible. That's when I knew I wasn't just stepping away. I was reclaiming my life. That night, I called my accountant. We dissolved the joint account. I updated my will, removed Lily's name as beneficiary, not to be cruel, but to be clear. Then I donated $25,000 0 cents to a scholarship fund for foster youth. Kids who really needed someone. Kids who'd never confuse convenience with love. The next morning, I wrote Susan a letter. Not bitter, not vengeful, just honest. I don't blame you, I wrote, not entirely. But I can't keep pouring myself into a family that sees me only in terms of what I provide. I loved you both. But I'm done begging to be acknowledged. I need peace. I need respect. I need me. I packed a suitcase, left the letter on the counter, and I walked out. I moved into a condo I'd quietly purchased 6 months earlier. Back then I told myself it was just an investment, but deep down, I knew I was buying an escape route, just in case. Turns out just in case had arrived. Weeks passed. Then a month. Susan texted a few times, Lily didn't. A friend told me Lily and Robert tried to apply for a personal loan to cover the wedding remainder. They were denied. Apparently they were shocked that the wealthy stepdad had gone dark. Then one afternoon, Susan messaged, "She's here. She wants to talk. She's crying. Please." I didn't race home. I sat at my office desk, staring out the window, remembering everything. Her laughter at age 12. The tooth fairy letters I used to write. The night she couldn't sleep and crawled into the armchair beside me just to be near. She probably forgot. But I remembered. That evening, I walked through the front door like it was any other Tuesday. Lily was on the couch, pale, makeup smudged. Her hands were twisted in her lap. She stood as I entered, like a student rising for the principal. "Daniel," she said. I raised a hand. "I don't want an apology," I told her. "Not today, maybe not ever." She opened her mouth, closed it. I walked past her, placed my briefcase on the table, and turned. "You remember when you were 13, I asked, you begged me to come to the school's father-daughter breakfast. Robert hadn't texted you in months. You said you didn't want to sit alone. I took off work, wore that hideous blue tie you loved, and brought your favorite muffins. You held my arm like it meant something, told everyone I was your dad." She nodded slowly. I remember everything," I said, "because I was there. Not for applause, not to be your real dad, just to be someone you could count on." Her eyes welled up. "I messed up, I know I did, I was just caught up. Robert wanted to be more involved, and I didn't think it would hurt you like that." "Didn't think," I said, "or didn't care." She looked away. "That's not fair. What's not fair is being erased from a life I helped build, paying for a seat at a table I was never really invited to." Silence. "I didn't expect you to disappear," she whispered. "I didn't disappear," I said. "I just stopped showing up for people who only see me as a bank account. You made your choice at the wedding, I'm making mine now. You came to fix it. No, you came to stop the fallout. That's not the same thing." Her voice cracked. "So what? You're just done with me?" I looked at her for a long time. "I don't know. Forgiveness isn't a check I can write. It has to be earned." And for once, she didn't argue. 3 days later, she showed up at my office. Not dressed to impress. No designer purse. Just Lily. No makeup, no mask. She looked like a kid again. She handed me a folder. Inside, a payment plan. An itemized breakdown of every dollar I'd spent. A letter. "I went through it all," she said. "Every receipt, every vendor. I called them. I calculated what I owe, with interest. I don't expect you to say yes, I just wanted to start somewhere." The letter read, "I owe you more than money. I owe you the truth and effort. This is where I begin." That was 6 months ago. She's made every payment. Small amounts, $150, 0 cents, $200, 0 cents, but never missed. She calls every week. Sometimes we talk for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. No begging, no dramatics, just a daughter, slowly learning how to show up. Susan and I started seeing each other again. Not like before, no illusions, just two people sharing space, honestly, carefully. And then last week, Lily asked if I'd consider being in her child's life. She's pregnant. I looked at her, really looked. The pride, the fear, the hope. She expected rejection. I didn't say yes, I didn't say no. I said, "I've got a lot of bedtime stories saved up." She cried. But this time, they were happy tears. We're not perfect. We're scared. But scars mean healing. Scars mean survival. And me? I'm not invisible anymore. I'm seen. Not for what I gained, but for who I am. And that's enough. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't screaming or slamming doors. It's silence. Dignity. I didn't walk out to make her feel guilty. I walked out to remind myself that I still mattered. And now they know it. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt unseen, unappreciated, or quietly walked away to protect your peace, we'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in Daniel's shoes? Have you ever had to choose your own dignity over a relationship? Leave a comment below and share your story, or simply let us know you're here, because sometimes just being heard makes all the difference. If you found value in this video, please consider giving it a like, subscribing to our channel, and turning on the bell so you never miss another story that cuts this deep. Your support helps us keep telling the real, raw, and unforgettable stories that deserve to be seen. Thanks for watching, and remember, your worth was never measured by how much you gave, but by how much you stayed true to yourself.